the story.
Go for it.
Welcome to I Like Batteries, the show where we explore the world of batteries. I'm Jeff Lynch.
And I'm Mike Muldoon. Good evening, Jeff Lynch. It was a fine evening and a day where I had some charging going on, but I had to warm the shed up first.
I bet. It was pretty cold.
It was cold. So we had to do a little shed warming, which is kind of somewhat tricky given the fact that the Wave 2 likes like high 30s to low 40s before it is efficient, let's just say.
Nice.
So, but I kind of heated up to there and then got to go. But it was fine. We did some charging. It was good. And I will say, though, the cold weather definitely affects batteries. And we do know that, given the fact we do a show on batteries and we've talked about this.
We have indeed.
And I've noticed it with the range in my Insight. I mean, it's not getting as much range now because clearly when I first start off, I can't really regen as much because the battery's too cold. But
and there's no battery warming system in
I don't believe
so.
I don't believe so.
Conditioning, I guess, is the term I was looking for.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'd have to look on newer hybrids if they're doing that. But you see that on EVs, which is good because you need to have that regen. And I think if we talked a little bit of pre-show and the week before and whatnot, you did a little traveling, and on your traveling, you get to experience a little EV. You want to tell me a little bit about that and our listeners as well?
Absolutely. So we had a fun time. So I flew. My wife and I flew from Boston to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then to visit my mom in Greer, South Carolina. Now, there's an airport 5 minutes from her house, but it's only an hour and a half drive from Charlotte to Greer. So it's more convenient. You don't have to worry about missing connections and all that stuff. So we just fly to Charlotte and drive. So we had rented a Model Y. Maybe we talked about it on the show earlier this year, maybe. It was probably last year. And we'd rented a Model Y in Chicago and had a fine experience with the rental and the charging. And the Tesla Model Y is nicer than the one I rented, and I'll get into all of that and why. But when we charged the Model Y, we had set the destination for the car rental return place. So when you show up at the charger and you plug it in, it tells you what your remaining charge will be at your destination based on your current charging, which is super helpful. So you're like, oh, I need to return it with 70% battery or what have you. And it'll just basically say, yep, you're good to go.
Which is good because EV rentals are kind of particular about that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, sure.
They say they are. That's also part of the problem. Well, not a problem. I'm happy that it worked out for me. Anyway, so it's about 90 miles each way from Charlotte to Greer, where my mother and stepfather live, and I decided I'm going to rent an EV. So you put in the EV and Avis, and we're Avis preferred members. So you arrive at the airport, you go up the escalator, and there's the board with your name on it. And typically there's a spot like H27 or whatever where your car is, and you skip the counter and all of that. But mine said counter, which means I had to go see the person at the counter. So I go to the counter, and the folks were nice, and they're like, "Oh, here's your name," and all the normal exchanges of information. And they say, "Oh, we have an electric car." She called on the radio, and they gave me the spot number, whatever, H15, doesn't matter what the number is. And we arrive, and it's an Ionic 5. It's like, oh, that's nice. Mike and I had a brief stint in an Ionic 5 when we visited Jesse at Greenwave EV. But this was a longer trip, so it was nice. I was happy to give it a try. Well, we step in. There's sort of a number of levels of interesting stories that came out of this. So the first of which was we had a hard time finding the tailgate release button. So there is obviously a rear view camera in this car, and there's a spot next to the rear view camera, but it's like a tiny little small button that you have to find with a little protruding indicator that we didn't find. So I used the key to open the back. So I go in the back and I dig around in my bag because I know it has CarPlay. So I grab my USB-C cable, and I have a new iPhone 16, so it's USB-C to USB-C. And I hop in the driver's seat, and there's only USB-A connectors. So strike one on this particular one. So we're like, okay, we can use my wife's iPhone to do navigation in CarPlay. Totally fine. So we grab the USB-A to Lightning cable, plug her phone in, and we're happy to go. And then we think we're set, and we turn it on. And problem one is it said it had 65% battery. And I wasn't sure of what the expected range was. It was unseasonably cold in Charlotte. And the other problem, which was more pressing, was the left front tire was indicating low pressure. So I go out and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm not driving this one. So back to the counter we go. And I got back there and I said, if you have another EV, fine, but I don't have to have an EV, like a hybrid or something would be perfectly acceptable. So she's like, no problem. 2 minutes later, gives me another spot number, and we go, and it's another Ionic 5. I'm like, oh, I guess, sort of pleasantly surprised. Another Ionic 5. Cool. So we know we need to use my wife's phone. We opened the back with the key fob and got on our way. So what else can I tell you about this? The user interface was okay in general. So once CarPlay was up, you can have CarPlay. So it's a long, wide display.
Yeah.
And so CarPlay can take up the whole thing, which is kind of interesting, right? So you get this sort of widescreen CarPlay experience. Or you can set it to do like 2/3 CarPlay and 1/3 like Ionic, Hyundai Ionic stuff.
Yeah, Hyundai native.
Right. So then, But one of those things was remaining range. It's like, that's cool. Battery charge and range, and a handy button to find charging stations. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So we chose that option. Unfortunately, you can't change that option until when CarPlay is connected. So you have to disconnect the phone, go into the settings, find this, I forget what they called it. There was some strange name. Projection settings, I believe, is what they referred to it as. And there was a toggle in there for full screen or not. So we resolved that, and we're reasonably happy with that. And then, like some EVs we've talked about on the show, there's paddle shifters, right? But You're not shifting gears, but you're basically changing regen.
Exactly, like my car has. My car has the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 3 levels of regen available. With the standard, the car coasts a little bit when you let off the accelerator. Notice I didn't say gas.
Correct.
Wasn't that good of me? Yeah.
Yes.
But if you, on the left-hand side is where you make it, where you increase the level of regen. And if you go one sort of all the way to the end, or level 4, if you will, it engages the one pedal driving, which is the most regen available, and again allows you to do the one pedal thing, which is kind of interesting. So I did that for a little bit while we were driving, and that was, you get used to it pretty quickly, I think, with how that goes. So we're cruising along, pretty comfy, little bit of wind noise, a little bit of road noise, but generally speaking, comfortable car to drive. Not sporty by any means, but comfortable. It does have drive modes, and we had it on eco the whole time for this first leg of the trip, because I figured we're not in any rush. We don't need to have this, and it gives you the maximum amount of regen possible.
Yeah. Oh, completely.
So we arrived at our destination, again, about an hour and a half. It was 90 miles. When we left, the car, I believe, said it had around 190 miles of range with, again, I think it was at 70 or 75% charge when we picked it up. So we arrived, I forget what the range was, but we used 40% of the battery to get there. So it must have been like 35% when we arrived. Okay. Like, that's fine. And we did a couple little errands and such during that first Friday we were there. And then we plugged it in. So we backed it into their garage and did the excruciating level 1 charge dance. So we plugged it in.
Yeah. The good old 110.
Yeah. I mean, it worked. So you plug it in, and there's apparently a setting, and you can change the volume of the voice that comes on and says, "Charging has started," when you plug it in. I'm like, thank you. So we plug it in, and it's charging at like 1.3 kilowatts is what's coming out of the standard 110 plug.
So you get 1.3 per hour. Yeah.
Well, yeah, 1 kilowatt, just over 1 kilowatt per hour.
Battery size? Did we get that? Or
we didn't get that, but it was the all-wheel drive Ionic 5. I'm not sure what year it was. Hyundai claims 293 miles city, 233 miles highway. It was cold, so I did expect less range. I didn't have those numbers in my head when we left. But
okay, so you get either 60. My research says either 63 kilowatt hours or 84.
So it was probably the 84 because it was the all-wheel drive.
Got it. Yep.
So the dash gives you miles per kilowatt hour.
Yes, this is good.
Which, when you're doing well, apparently with, again, the terrain, the roads, the speed we were driving, we were in the mid-low threes, so 3.2, 3.5, sometimes up to 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour. So again, that's not going to get you lots of range added very quickly when you're charging that slowly. Again, we plugged it in. We were done driving by 6:00 at night. So it had probably 15 or 18 hours of charging.
Okay.
By the time we used it the next day. And I want to say it was up in the 50 to 60% charge. I was like, okay, it was like a little more than I expected, but also like that sounds about right based on the amount of time we were gone or not driving it. And so then we went out and did our stuff, and my wife and my mom were going to go shopping, so I was going to go find a charging station and get the car to full because we were heading back to the airport on Sunday. Well, our plans changed and we didn't do that. So I plugged it back into the regular charger. It was at like 80% when we left on Sunday to go back to the airport. And I knew that approximately I was going to use 40% of the battery, which would leave me around 40% charge. And Avis says you have to return it with 70% or greater charge. Okay. So we left ourselves plenty of time to find a charging station, like an extra hour and a half on the way back. So, and we thought, well, let's get within 15 miles of the airport and then pull off and do a little quick charge. So now commences the charging fiasco part of the story. So we used a little searchy thing on the Hyundai.
Right.
And it gives you a big list of things. And we're like, oh, cool. Let's find the closest one. That sounds fine. We pull off.
Close is usually good. Yes,
and
I agree.
It was a mile and a half off of the highway. And it was at like some municipal location. And then I realized I'm not at a DC fast charger. I'm at an AC charger.
Oh, yeah.
So I plug in. We back in because the charging port is on the passenger side rear of the Ionic 5. And so we back in, it's free.
Oh,
You have to download their app, and I didn't bother creating an account, so it cost me 99 cents, but they had Apple Pay, so it was really pretty smooth. So we plug it in, and it locks in, like you heard like a little lock when you plugged the charger in. And it indicated that it was charging at like 8 kilowatts. I'm like, well, this is better than standard, but still not fantastic.
no. This is going to be a fair bit of time. Yeah.
And the next problem was we were sitting there thinking, like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to get us what we need in any time soon without sitting here for an hour and a half or two. So we're like, okay. And then we realized that it actually told you whether it was AC or DC chargers on the list. So there's hundreds of choices, and there's like just a handful of DC chargers. So we're like, okay, let's go to a DC charger. So I get out and I attempt to remove the charging plug, and it won't release.
This is not good. This is not good.
I pressed the button to try to release it, but every time I released the button, it thought I was engaging charging again. So the car, like 6 or 7 times, is like, charging has started. Like, I know.
I would like it to end, actually. I would like the charging to end.
So this was interesting. So we're like literally like doing searches on the web, like how do you disconnect this? And apparently you have to download and sync with the Hyundai app for the car in order to cancel charging. We didn't find this out till much later. What we ended up doing is Alice was messing about with the charging settings and found you could set like the maximum charge, like basically charge it up to 80%, right? And then it would just automatically stop. So we had 56% charge or something by the time we had reached this point in the day. And there was thankfully an option that said 50%. So she tapped 50% and it was like, done, thing unlocked, and we were on our way. I'm like, awesome.
You're free. Because you really shouldn't just, this is a good safety, you shouldn't just drive away with it plugged in.
That would be bad.
That's like when you see people drive away, if the nozzle is in the gas thing.
That's right.
Like these are not bad. I just want to, that seems obvious, but
yeah, I wonder if it would let you.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if the car would
charging,
even,
right? Your car doesn't.
Versus like
your ICE car doesn't know.
An ICE car,
fueled.
yeah. Because I have never seen it in person, but I've seen videos of people with an ICE car just driving out. But there is like that release that's on.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah,
that
like
stops the flow of fuel,
so it's not just like flowing all over the place. But
right.
But still, go ahead. So anyway. you were able to get to that part. So we're getting there.
Right. So part 2. Then we find a DC fast charger, and it's at a Nissan dealer. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, it's the closest one. Let's go for it. So we navigate to the Nissan dealer, and it was on the other side of a 4-lane road. So we had to cross the 4-lane road and enter where the Nissan dealer was. So we crossed the road, and the gate's locked. So the dealership's closed. We can't get into the Nissan dealer. And I'm like, I can see the charger. Like, it's right over there.
Yeah.
And there was no alternate way in. So strike 2 on charging. So then we're like, okay, let's find another DC charger. We'll keep at it until we're out of time. So we found another charger at a BP gas station. And this was definitely a DC fast charger. You can just tell because it's the CCA style. The cable is like an 1.25 inches thick. We're like, okay, here we go. So we pull up there. And again, there's no real instructions or anything. Like, you can't just like plug it in and have it ask you anything. So there's a small 2D barcode on the front of it to download their app.
Okay.
So you use that. You download this. I forget what it was called, like Go Connect or something. Let me find it. EV Connect. The other one was a charge point station. So I download the EV Connect app. It basically says, "Hey, what do you want to do?" and it basically says, hey, scan a barcode. So I rescanned the same barcode, and it found the location. And I'm like, cool. So I had plugged it in and picked the right side. I'm like, cool, start. So it starts charging. I'm like, awesome. And then I go sit in the driver's seat, and the little, the dash display starts to crank up. It's like, oh, okay. So 10 kilowatts, 30 kilowatts, 50 kilowatts, 75 kilowatts, 100 kilowatts. I'm all right. We're cruising.
This is what we're looking for.
This is what we want. And it said, 18 minutes to.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, sit back, hands behind the head. And then it changes. It starts ramping back down and ends up at 8 again. I'm like, oh no.
This is not what we want.
This is the opposite of what we want. Oh my gosh. So anyway, for kicks, I tried the other side. Same thing. There was a message on the display that said charging was limited. So the power output of the station was limited. The only thing that I don't know, and I haven't checked up on and would like to follow up on, is I could have sworn at some point as we were flashing through the EV charge settings that there was a way to basically tell the car not to ask for, quote, the maximum you can give me, but to sort of limit the charge it's requesting, if that's a thing.
So I'm going to jump in here, and this
Please
is
do.
Off the cuff, but I just did a search of Ionic 5.
Okay.
Charging is limited message, and it says charging is limited message usually means the car is restricting the charge power due to factors like high battery temperature, a faulty charging cable, a problem with charging station, exceeding the set charge limit, or potentially a battery management system issue. Now I'm going to ask you something. I wonder, because you would set it to 50% to be able to get that other one a lock, and if you hadn't changed it back, is that why? Just based upon what I just saw in this statement. I mean, it's possible, right?
No. Well,
no. Okay. Good.
And the only reason it's no is because there are separate settings for AC and DC chargers.
Oh, okay. But we don't know what it was because you didn't go into that setting.
Don't know what it was.
So I'm just throwing that out there for we're troubleshooting this off the cuff. We're thinking its battery temperature was not too hot because you said it was cooler out. Would that be fair?
It was cold. Yeah, I mean, there was a warning on the station.
It could be a charging cable issue, but it could be, and the other one is charging station problems. Issues with charging station itself, like malfunctioning power station, can affect the charging speeds. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not that it totally shut off, but it backed off like to AC speeds, which was disappointing.
They said the BMS could have a problem as well. So it could be a BMS problem.
I don't remember how many miles.
I'm just throwing these out there because, yeah.
Anyway, so strike three on the charging, and I'm like, whatever, $35 extra is what Avis claims to charge you if you return the EV with between, I don't know, more than 30 but less than 70% or something. And we only had about 10 miles left to the airport. So we arrive back at the airport, go up the ramp, and there's 1 million cars being returned.
1 million?
1 million. It was unbelievable. I counted. And it was one of these like, okay, leave the keys on the dash and we'll send you the receipt. I'm like, okay, bye. Yeah. And so I think we arrived back with, I don't know, 40-something% charge. Didn't get any fees assessed from Avis. So thanks, Avis, for that. But it was a bit of a reality check for like DC charging infrastructure.
And just, renting an EV.
Yeah. No, right? So it was sort of like, I don't know that it was worth it. Like, it was fun to have and it was fun to do and enjoy because we're battery people. So
right.
I wanted to do the best possible thing, but I tried.
But I mean, the other thing that you did say is that, I mean, you had done rented a Model Y and that was smoother. And part of that was you would equate that to the charging infrastructure, right? Because it was just
yes.
at the beginning.
And that reminds me.
Go for it. Yeah, I reminded you.
Before, at some point during the during my Googling, or maybe it was even before I rented, Hyundai makes a supercharger adapter.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, I should probably ask for that next time.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Because if they had that, would have been no problem. I mean, I'm sure I would have been able to find a supercharger station and have zipped it full. And
I agree. And so for our listeners, I mean, this is good for you to know. So, I mean, Jeff has done a great job of doing this for you and kind of go over it. But we did want to, I did spend some time in pre-show, and then we're going to go over this. So obviously we know what Avis has done, but I want to go a little bit with other carriers. So Hertz right now has returning an electric car. Let's go over that, because obviously they're all going to have different types of electric cars. They have an EV purchase option, which is EVPO. Purchase option to pay for the amount of charge in the EV at the time of pickup, a rate similar to local charging stations, plus a small fee. Then you can return the EV at any battery level. No refunds or charge left in the battery at time of return. You have an EVSC, which is an EV service charge. If you do not select the EVPO and do not recharge the vehicle yourself, your Hertz will charge you for the difference in battery level at pickup and return at the same energy rate as EVPO, but with a higher fee. Now, if you recharge it, pay no additional cost if you return the EV at the same battery level it had at pickup, but you never have to bring it back over 75%. So they're kind of saying, like, hey, if you left with 50, come back with 50, you're good, right? But you never have to go above that 75%.
But that's really a bad user experience on the other.
Oh, if you pulled out and then you basically have to charge, horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
No, it's like, it's one of those,
and
like,
I guess that's because
should be 100. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I guess like if you pulled out and you're like, oh, we have half a tank of gas for an ICE car, you're almost positive you're going to be able to find a gas station near there, right? That's
probably 10 within 5 miles of the airport.
Sure, but are you going to have enough, DC fast chargers? I don't know. And then you're like, oh, I got to charge. So the other thing is we looked up enterprises. If your EV was charged 80% when you picked it up, at this level of charge, you should return it at. Most enterprise branches operate like-for-like policy. Whatever the level of charge your EV when you picked it up is the minimum level you should return it. You will never have less than 10% charge when you pick it up. Now, that was moderately disturbing to me when I read it. Because, so it could have 11? Because that's really bad. I mean, like you could theoretically pull out. Now, I'm sure this doesn't happen. Although maybe I'm not sure. But you could pull out, have 11% charge, and maybe not be able to get to a DC fast charger.
Maybe not.
Which would be an absolutely awful user experience. But so, this is where I reach out to our listeners. If you're listening to this, you have had the experience, feel free to email us, power@ilikebatteries.com, and tell us a story or ask us a question and things like that. But so I mean that's where it's at, Jeff. And I mean, at least for our listeners, I hope personally that this was able to get them 80% charged. Because
with no fees.
No fees. And so hopefully this has charged you up. It got you going. It got your mind thinking, because it's the holiday season. You might be traveling and you might want to rent an EV. So you might want to check into these things, and you might want to bring a USB to USB-C adapter, especially if you have a different iPhone, because some of these vehicles don't have USB-C. So
it turns out I could actually I ended up using one last story. Sorry about this.
Go for it. Yeah.
Because I'm wearing the headphones that I brought with me.
Oh,
these are Sony headphones, and they charge USB-C. And I happened to have a USB-A to USB-C cable in the case. I'm going to show Mike, and he's going to.
I'm going to do something.
He's going to tell our listeners what the problem is with this cable.
That looks like, that's the length there. That's going to be your problem there. It's like, I don't even know if that's a foot.
Oh gosh, no, it's maybe 5 inches.
So
not
good. Yeah, that's going to give you some problems of plugging that in, things like that. So here's the take-home message: bring some cables with you that are different adapters.
Cables, adapters, do the whole
cables, adapters, and maybe even a Tesla adapter if you're bringing some of those things out, folks. But hopefully you have a great week. Hopefully you stay fully charged. Like we said, we got you up to 80%. Take it easy.